Hi everybody. I wanted to make a video to try to help you with your week 1 journal assignment. Um, I'm going to just explain a passage from the Odyssey and then just kind of how it has meaning for me and is relevant to today's issues. And then hopefully that'll help you as you approach your assignment with the Odyssey that you need to talk about and the things that Odysseus has to overcome in the Odyssey itself and in the relationship between the two. So this is towards the beginning, and in the beginning there are all the gods kind of talking to each other. Well, not all the gods, but Zeus and Athena and some others are there, and they're kind of opening up the story of Odysseus. We know that from the beginning that Odysseus is trapped on an island somewhere. He's with a goddess named Calypso, and he's kind of being held there against his will. And he just he wants to get home to his wife, essentially, back to his home. But, so this is in around line 35, and it says, Zeus addressed the other gods that are all on Olympus right now. It's disgraceful how these humans blame the gods. They say their tribulations come from us, when they themselves, through their own foolishness, bring hardships which are not decreed by fate. For example, Aegisthus, who took for himself the wife of Agamemnon, Atreus' son, and then murdered him, so Aegisthus murdered Agamemnon once the man came home. None of that was set by fate. Aegisthus knew his acts would bring about his total ruin, so he has paid for everything in full. So what ended up happening to Aegisthus is that Orestes, who was Agamemnon's son, went and killed him because he stole his mom, his dad's wife, and then Aegisthus killed his father. But going back to the passage, it's disgraceful how these humans blame the gods. They say their tribulations come from us, when they themselves, through their own foolishness, bring hardships which are not decreed by fate. Now, how does that relate? So, the way I've been thinking about it is, so this was written, 2,500 years ago. But it's interesting because this gives us a glimpse into the perspective on the gods. So, these Greek gods and goddesses were representations of different things. And as we look back, some of us might think that it was kind of strange, this religion was strange, but instead I would just have everybody think about that, this was the dominant religion, just like in our culture, Christianity is the dominant religion. And who knows what the dominant religion will be in another 2,000 years or 3,000 years. And what will the dominant religion be in 50,000 years? Will humans even exist in 50,000 years? So these are all interesting questions. And I'm sure if the ancient Greeks came and looked at our religion, they would find it probably just as confusing as we find theirs. But anyway, one thing though is there's this concept of fate. And that's still a concept that many people have. Many people believe that things happen for a specific reason. Many people believe that everything is kind of determined to be the way that it is, that we're products of our environments, and that we can't escape who we are based on our development. And then there are a lot of people who think that we are free, and that we, in fact, our actions have meaning and value and purpose. They're free from coercion from outside sources, whether that be gods or the social conditions or fate or any number of factors. But here, it appears that in general, perhaps the perspective from the ancient Greeks was that anything that happened was ordained by the gods. And so if something bad happened to you, then it was the gods' fault. And so you blame the gods for things that happened. But then here Zeus says, through Homer, that they themselves, the humans, through their own foolishness, bring hardships which are not decreed by fate. So what he's saying is, we all act crazy and we do stupid stuff, and then bad things happen, but then we blame God or the devil or whatever. And we see this a lot in our own society today. You see people who make decisions on earth, and if we are responsible for our actions, then it's we who are acting. It's we who are making those decisions. It's not that God has ordained it or that the devil is causing us to do something. So in a certain sense, Zeus is saying something like, I'm sure you've probably heard people say that they were influenced by something evil or something, or God let something bad happen in their lives. I used to work in an emergency room, and I was always amazed at how people would come in. Why, God? Why did you let this happen? Why did you let this happen, God? And they were high on drugs, drunk, got in a car wreck, broke their legs, hurt other people. But when they came in, they were asking God why God let it happen. And I just thought in my head, this was totally the outcome of your own decisions. God didn't do any of this. And yet humans naturally go to that area. And so you can see how there's a connection here between ancient Greek perception of the gods. Are the gods in control? Is fate in control? Are we ultimately just pawns that are moved around on the earth by the gods? Or is it the case that we're actually free in a certain sense? That our actions are our own responsibility and that we can't blame the gods, but only ourselves when negative things happen or when positive things happen. So anyway, I just think this is a really interesting passage. It does really connect with me. Everybody here is going to have different religious beliefs and things like that, and I think we can have an open forum without, we can and we ought to in college and in other areas have open forums where we discuss these things in our own perspectives. I like to tend to think that whether God exists or not, that we are responsible for our actions, that we aren't necessarily the products of chance or fate, that we can extend beyond our social circumstances, and that we're not just merely the outcomes of everything that's occurring around us. But I also agree with Nietzsche a lot and do recognize a lot of the determinism that's inherent in all of us. None of us decided where we were born, for example. I didn't decide that I was going to be born in Marion, Indiana. I just found myself there. I didn't decide that I was going to be in a white body that's male. I just have found myself here as I emerged into consciousness. And so that, in a certain sense, has determined the trajectory of my life. I'm speaking English right now. I can't speak any other, I can kind of speak Spanish, but I can't speak Yugoslavian or something. Or Slavic. I can't speak Chinese. I can't speak Japanese. I can't speak, even, one 1,000th of the languages on earth. So in a certain sense, I'm determined by my society. I've been determined to speak English. I've been determined to live in a culture that uses this language. And that cuts off other possibilities for me. The only way that I can speak to you is through the language that I've learned. So anyway, all that to say, are we free? Are we not free? Are we partially the product of our environment? In a certain sense, we're all determined because we don't choose to find ourselves in the bodies that we find ourselves in. We don't choose our families. We don't choose initially where we find ourselves in the world. But that being said, perhaps we can break free from that determinism and have actions that we're responsible for that ultimately lead to positive or negative outcomes. And if that's true, and we are responsible for those acts, then they are extremely important. And no matter what, even if we are determined, we still believe that we're responsible for our actions. So that's another interesting question. Even if we are determined, why is it the case that we believe that we are free and responsible? But anyway, as you read, focus on passages that connect with you and think about them. Think about how they apply in your life, and think about the insights that they give you into Greek culture as well as the connections to our own.